Hey, welcome to Happening Sounds. Patrick just hit his head, so he has to cover his face. Our topic for today is the notion that costuming and spectacle take away from musical artistry.
I don't think so. I think that they can enhance or distract, and I don't think distract is taken. But I also think that it is just a part of a whole. Some bands have an image that they play with. Some people evolve their image for. I think I need examples, and look right here. Devo, one of my favorite bands.
And one of my favorite records of theirs, Question, Are We Not Men? Answer,
the Devo idea was the concept of de-evolution, how we're regressing into a state of primitive violence and not thinking, just turning back into stupid monkeys. And Devo dressed the part. Their early costumes had them with fake breasts, fake like paper mache breasts, bicycle shorts, 3D cardboard goggles. With Are We Not Men, they wore the yellow jumpsuit. For the future was lab coats, I think. Or no, they had the white suits and they had the construction hats. Freedom of Choice, they went on to wearing the black turtlenecks over the face with no sleeves, the energy domes, the iconic energy domes, and black shorts and knee pads. New Traditionalists, black plastic pompadour, blue futuristic suit. And they kept going, and they kept changing their look with every album. But it didn't detract from what they were doing. It was the uniform were doing. Yeah, their music kind of got. There's only so many times you could break. They might not be the most melodic songs, but there's still a lot to love in them. Excursions, more experimental. There's a lot to love. They're more experimental excursions, and then they hit it with Eno. Here they had a lot of mutant pop songs. Their second album, overlooked at first. People went from Are We Not Men with Uncontrollable Urge and Come Back Joni to Whip It and Girl You Want on Freedom of Choice. It's kind of skipping over Duty Now for the Future, but they eventually kind of came back to it because it's even better than Freedom of Choice. So I don't think that this detracts from the musical artistry. I think it helps push their agenda.
I like the fact of the album that you're about to show. You're about to show the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and you're focusing on the fact that they're all wearing these costumes on the cover, and of course inside. It's important to notice, though, when we're talking about this, that with the recording of Peppers and onwards, they weren't playing live anymore. So these outfits would only be used for their press. From the beginning, they were a band with a uniform. They always wore the same suits.
Yep.
And they're considered one of the most iconic bands of all time. That's interesting to me because that sort of breaks the mold of the typical rock band. The typical rock band is like wearing the torn jeans or biker jackets or whatever, right? Like
the Ramones. White t-shirt, leather jacket.
The Beatles were like in their early uniform. You'd almost like look at them as like a group of cellists or something. They look. Their image is kind of square in a way. It's kind of interesting.
And then the drugs took hold.
Yeah.
But it never took away from the music. People remember Sgt. Pepper's especially as this jump-off point, even though for me it was Revolver.
Yeah, but what I'm saying too, like with the early uniform, like they'd be dressed very conservatively.
Yeah.
And I think that played into the music nicely because you have this conservative appearance, and then they do like something like Twist and Shout or Money, this wild rock and roll songs.
David Bowie.
Yeah.
Who right from the beginning had a persona. He was a chameleon. He was the Peter Sellers of rock and roll. People didn't really know who the real David Bowie was. He started off as a young long-haired chap when he put out his early album, his pre-Space Oddity, and then Space Oddity came out. He had the wild hair. Then he did like the bourgeois long hair Prince for Man Who Sold the World. What was after that? Hunky Dory. There was Diamond Dogs. There's Aladdin Sane. There's obviously Ziggy Stardust. There's the Thin White Duke. And every time Bowie reinvented himself, he had a slightly different sound that now, looking back at his entire oeuvre, is just David Bowie. But there's different eras of Bowie that people...
Well, yeah, it's interesting what you say because Bowie was obsessed with exploring different types of music, but also different types of fashion.
Yeah.
And they kind of walked hand in hand with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't think it took away. I think it, in Bowie's case especially, greatly enhanced what you were listening to. When he was the alien Ziggy Stardust
Mm-hmm.
and singing about space and coming to Earth and feeling like an outsider, if he was doing it in his Thin White Duke persona or his princely, long-haired man who sold the world persona, it just wouldn't sell it as well. The music's still great, but I think together they fed into each other. It was a beautiful symbiotic relationship between sound and vision.
This is front.
This is Front. This is The Residents. This is a group from the United States of America. Who
No one knows who they are.
No one knows who they are. They always match. Mostly here, they're wearing these like baked potato tinfoil outfits, but their most iconic look is full tuxedos with the white gloves, top hats, and giant fiberglass eyeballs with a different color iris in each one of them. Sometimes they'd have like a big black onyx skull. There's a guy with a big black skull. Now they go around, they wear like old man costumes. Randy is the geezer who performs the music of this art collective called The Residents, and The Residents are The Residents. Some of their stuff is, to some, unmelodic and unlistable art pap. And then their early stuff, which when it came out was something super subversive and crazy, now just kind of sounds like pop music.
I think this is a great example that you've picked, and I'd like to explore this a little bit more. Because often when people are using costuming and spectacle, like the Beatles or Bowie, it's building on to their image of who they are as people. But the Residents, it's slightly different because all of their costumes are designed to completely take all individuality away from them. So it doesn't feed into that pop star as mythical figure. It makes them into anonymous posters in the musical world, right?
And it's such a strange thing to say when you're wearing a mask and you're not letting anyone know who you are. You're removing the ego, but you're an image that people are now latching onto and worshiping like as if you were an actual person, an ego. It's kind of it's a double-edged thing for me. When someone says, I want my music to speak for itself, but then they do something outlandish like wear a giant eyeball head in a tuxedo when they're performing. So you're still being worshipped. It's doing what they want to do, but it's also the same as if you were just a popular lead singer. You can be anonymous eyeball guy, or you can be Freddie Mercury. People are going to know who you are if they see your picture.
Prince.
The purple one himself.
Well, when Prince started out on his first two albums, it really wasn't so much about costuming.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess like open shirts with, where you could see his navel or whatever. But then it went on from 1980's Dirty Mind album, when he decided that he's definitely going to try to be very sexual in his stage appearance, and like he'd go on stage in a trench coat and underwear, and that would be it, and the high heeled shoes and all this. So his costuming fit very well within the thematic areas of his music. So I think it went very well hand in hand.
But everyone also starts somewhere too. I mean, there's some people who come out of the gate with the look and the feel and the concept of what they want to do, and then there's Prince, who I don't know Prince as well as Jeff does, who may have started out as just a guy making music and then found some success and financial support from a record label that signed him, where he can kind of cultivate this character that he wanted to present when he recorded, released, performed music. So yeah, maybe at the beginning he was just a dude playing stuff, but then as soon as he realized that this is what he was going to be doing,
when he became a star, especially.
He became a star. So maybe he was forming it as he was going, whereas these guys were kind of underground at first, got it all set up, and whether or not they were going to be famous, if it happened, it happened. If it didn't, it didn't. They were going to keep making their costume and music.
I think it's interesting, the example of Prince, right? Because this addresses not so much like with the Beatles or David Bowie, but Prince was someone who really came onto the scene in the public's consciousness with the rise of music video with MTV, right? And he's definitely music of that generation in the 80s, breaking through with Michael Jackson and Madonna and so on, right? Where costuming and spectacle became much of the requirement for being a musician at that time because you had to look good, because you were on TV. So that's the question. Because you want to be on Much Music or MTV and you want to look good, does that take away from the music a little bit with the expectation that the visual becomes more important? And I think that was an era where sometimes you'd have a video, for example, that was really, had a cool story, or there was some cool things happening in the action of the video, whereas the song would be kind of lame, right? But yet the song would shift tons and tons of units. I guess it comes back to the original question. Does costuming and spectacle take away from the music in that sense?
Like I said at the beginning, I think it distracts. If you don't have a lot of substance, then yeah. I think that if you're lacking somewhere, you can use costuming and spectacle to...
to reassert the balance.
Yeah, to balance it or just to fill in what you're missing. Then I think but I also think that it can just enhance. It can take a photograph that's fading and just add that, I think, that pop of color. This whole video killed the radio star thing?
Well, I think this question is falling upon that notion, right? Because this is certainly something that people used to talk about in the era of MTV or Much Music. The fact that video is really making artists from the past inconsequential. Like, you take a band where the members really aren't that pretty to look at, like AC/DC or something like that. And they're a band that just relied on like heavy duty riffage, right? And they're just not pretty guys, and they've never been much into visual spectacle in their rock videos.
Yeah.
I mean, does something like MTV diminish the value of bands like that? I don't know
if diminish is the right word. I think that if a band has the money and the resources to come up with something super, super stylized that is eye candy as opposed to, ear candy, and it eclipses the actual music to the point where people just forget about the music and want to see the spectacle, then it's only a bad thing if, I guess, it's infringing on you. I don't think it's distracting. I don't think it's taking away anymore. I think now that there's the vision and the sound, there's people who came up with it and are a whole, and that's a part of the artist, the band, the vision, and then there's people who just want clicks and views, and they rely more on the spectacle than their actual sound and material
and musicality
and
instrumental chops
and everything. I think it's easier now to make a visual splash than it is to make. There's so much to listen to out there that if you can create an image that someone can latch onto, you might have something fresh, and you might have something that's going to just attract a lot of eyes.
Right, and perhaps for visually minded people, that's the whole reason for enjoying a music video.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. If you enjoyed this episode of Happening Sounds,
then give us some money
and click the subscribe button below.